Welcome back to, is it episode 4?
It is episode.
Is it 4? 4? Okay, it's a reshoot. Say everything again.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Thank you for tuning in again. We have some interesting topic, I suppose. Do you think this is a general topic that people will be interested in, like most people, or do you think this is going to cater to a certain type of audience?
It's hard to tell, but what I will say is it's certainly a topic that most people should care about.
That's a good, nice. I was gonna fist bump you for that one. That was good. That was good.
It's definitely one of those more primary issues.
Yeah, agreed. Well, yeah, for sure. Especially, I think it's applicable to America specifically. I can't talk about other places because I live in America.
Almost all Western religion.
Yeah, and just culture, because this isn't specifically religion. You know,
Right.
This is culturally based. So,
Yeah.
we want to talk about conformity.
Mm-hmm.
And we also a little bit want to talk about skepticism and cynicism and how they've kind of contributed to conformity in the West and a lot of what we know nowadays. So, yeah, what are your first thoughts on, like, is there any instant thing you want to say about what the topic?
Well, yeah, in terms of like the problem with conformity and its relation to the West,
Mm-hmm.
people are conformists. In the sense,
Mhm.
like the majority of people conform to society. They change the way they act and behave based off of new cultural norms.
Yeah.
Yeah, and or it also actually it relates to nominal versus normal.
Mm-hmm.
Nominal being, or normal being what is right and good,
Mm-hmm.
and nominal being, what society
Is
is. Yeah.
nowadays pretty much. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I agree with that for sure. I guess the first way that I want to start this off is I want to start with skepticism and cynicism, because I think it's a really good way to bridge into how we've gotten to conformity and where we're at now. So Jordan Peterson has this really fantastic quote. I'm going to paraphrase because I don't know the quote off the top of my head, but he basically says something along the lines of, skepticism is like your adolescence. It's the first step you take out of adolescence. So you can view it as like maybe being a young teen, right? Where you start to just question some things. You're like, are we sure that that's actually what that is?
Yeah.
You believe in Santa when you're young. You finally start to ask, is this real?
Yeah.
You become
start
a
to
skeptic.
see like how the world works, and you start to question things based off of logic that you've developed as just by growing up.
Right. But if you stay at skepticism, it's a naive life. It's not a good one to live. You need more information. You got to kind of branch beyond skepticism, I think. Then you get to cynicism, which is where that's like the natural sort of path I think a lot of people go on. At least that's what he says. And there you kind of arrive at this conclusion, like you've seen the real harsh world. You're like a young adult. You're late teen, young adult. And you're like, wow, the world is a rough place. Bad things happen all the time. And you become kind of cynical. Everyone has their own self-interest at heart. Nobody cares about anybody except for what benefits you or that person, for example. That's kind of a cynical way of looking at things.
Right. You prejudge situations in the sense that
Mhm.
you're not just skeptical of them. You're not just wondering, is this really the way it should be?
Right.
But you go further to say that
It's bad.
it's bad before even I know. I'm just gonna write it off automatically.
Right. There's like some presuppositions that happen in cynicism that don't exist in skepticism. And then I think eventually you go out of cynicism with kind of ending up back where you were when you were a child, which is like hope. You hopefully end up somewhere where you can have a healthy level of both cynicism and skepticism. You can evaluate a circumstance based on all the variables, but still have hope.
Yeah.
Not feel like everything is evil inherently.
Yeah. But that hope, that's powerful. So
Yeah.
You think so? Actually, I've just to relate it to a story in the Bible,
Go for it.
and it was interesting because one of our friends just kind of wrote us a message about it,
Mhm.
and it takes us to Luke when this is when Jesus comes and says, "I want to make you fishers of men." But originally, he sees Simon Peter. He's like, "Cast your nets into the sea."
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. And he says, "Cast your nets into the sea." Peter says, "I've been toiling all day and all night, and I've caught nothing."
Right.
Right.
Why would I?
Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
So he doesn't. Right. But he doesn't. Like so.
Mhm.
He obviously he's like, I've been toiling all day and all night, but at your word, I'll do it.
Mhm.
And he does it.
Mhm.
And that's that little bit of hope, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Like he has that healthy skepticism to say, okay, obviously that's kind of dumb,
Mhm.
right? Like I've all day, all night, the last 12 hours or whatever, I've been at it, working hard, nothing.
Right.
And at this, and I'm a skilled fisherman. Jesus is a
Yeah.
carpenter.
Right.
He's
Right.
not a fisherman.
Yeah.
Right. So, but he does it.
Yeah. He does
just
it anyway.
in humility, and obviously he catches a ton. Yeah. So it's,
Yeah.
that hope that
It's necessary.
Maybe there's something to this. Yeah.
And if he were to be cynical in that situation, just for the exercise of discerning between the two, he wouldn't have cast that net. He would have immediately rebuked Jesus. He would have been like, "What do you know? You're not you don't know anything about fish. B, you haven't been on this boat for as long as I have. You know nothing about this water. How long have you where your studies?" Like he would have attacked all of the validity of the situation without any level of well, maybe I should just try the thing. And that's kind of the thing that we notice in a lot of Western, you could say in quotations, mature people. Because if a kid walks up to them and tries to say "Hey, why do you?" Here's a great example. Kid walks up to an adult, and is like, "Why do you drink?" And the adult's like, it tastes good, or whatever reason he gives, and the kid well, it's not it's very bad for you. Why do you do it? It doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense. And the adult just kind of brushes it off, "Oh, this is a stupid kid who doesn't know anything." That information the kid's presenting is valid and true, and there's a lot of fruit there. But a lot of people don't want to acknowledge the fruit because it's a kid. Because he can't know. This kid can't know anything about what I'm going through in the circumstance, and he may not. But that doesn't mean that the information isn't true. And I think nowadays we're trained to, if someone presents information, invalidate immediately. Why is this wrong? Why isn't it true? Instead of
cynical. I mean, that is cynical when someone gives you information, objective or not, and the first thing you ask is, "I need your credentials."
Right.
Oh, you went to Oxford, not Harvard? I don't take what
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, this is a study from the Ohio State University, not from Harvard. Less valid.
Yeah.
Oh, it isn't peer reviewed 6 times.
Right. Exactly.
No, and that's the reason that's interesting is because it almost goes in opposition to conformity, which is really interesting because a lot of people are, I would say the broad Western ideology is cynicism. That's a big thing that we've adapted, especially with the internet. Everyone thinks they're an expert in every field in the world.
It's interesting though because conformity is not just conforming to the environment, but conforming to the things that conformity can be manipulated to what that person wants. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So in a sense that conformity still heavily exists, but you think about no one's going to ask for a 6-time peer-reviewed study if that study agrees with what they already, you're only going to ask about the exact credentials if someone brought up a study that, proved your point
in opposition.
Wrong.
Yeah, right. That's true. The reason that I say that they're opposite, and you bring up a good point where they can kind of complement each other, but there's not a healthy level of cynicism in regards to complacency. So everybody's on TikTok, right? Everyone's scrolling and everyone's doing all of these Western things, right? I'll bring up some things that aren't going to be popular opinions. For example, sex before marriage. I disagree with it. It wasn't, historically speaking, wasn't a thing in past cultures.
Well,
at least,
in many cultures it was regarded as wrong. I mean, but then there was also
there were other cultures, of course. But I mean, the culture that founded America was supposed to be a culture that agreed with marriage before sex, for example.
And now, that was Christian. Obviously,
Right. So, but we've moved towards that being socially acceptable. But there is no cynicism regarding is this true, except for by the Christians, right? But by the other people, let's say you don't believe in religion, you don't believe there's a God, but they don't even have a healthy level of cynicism because it's, like you said, something that they want.
Right.
Right. It's sex is great, right? Why not? I enjoy it. I don't want it to be disproved. But if you look at any studies, it's clear that sex before marriage is detrimental to your long-term happiness.
Right. I mean, so for example, these same people want to live a happy marriage or whatever. They want to get married. Assuming. They want to have kids. Whatever. Yeah. That's inherent. We all want that.
I would agree.
It's in our desire.
Yeah.
But the Christian belief is that sex before marriage is wrong. Right. And that's whatever the Christian religion laid out. God's not real. Whatever. How can he make laws? then they don't conform to it solely in opposition to Christianity.
Yeah.
Whereas, yeah, you're right. If you look at it, the chances of you having a long-lasting, happy marriage is like really low when you decide to have sex before marriage. When
Right.
you had a lot of, sexual partners preemptive to marrying, right? So, yeah, you're completely right in the sense that conformity, in regards to complacency, yeah.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, and so I guess something I wanted to talk about specifically as well is kind of what's the course of action a little bit. Like, we look at where we're at now, and I have this question. I had this conversation with a lot of people that I know. What's the next step? Actually, you heard it in the previous podcast with Connor and Garrett Holt. I kind of asked them, like, they had mentioned that the world was in spiritual debt, right? It was not spiritually fulfilled, and I was like, what's the next step? And a lot of times there's like, you can't.
Yeah,
it's too late. And like, I'm not particularly satisfied with that because there have been a lot of times where cultures have gone off the rails and been brought back. Like the Romans, they went off the rails for a little bit and then they were brought back, right? They can't and then they eventually fell again. But
let me actually, keep going. I'm gonna actually
unplug the laptop, break everything. I'm gonna snap some stuff.
Yeah.
For audio listeners, this is rough.
Yeah, it is rough. But I'm actually gonna look up a verse that kind of goes along with what you're saying. But keep
go for it. Yeah. Yeah, like I was saying, it's never too late, right? So we should make a plan, right? We shouldn't just like be like, they won. Oh well. No, we can do things to educate people. And I think the reality is people don't they don't necessarily want to be conformists. I think a lot of people enjoy being a part of something. That doesn't mean they need to conform to like secular culture, for example. Like you can conform to, because I think in moments it's okay to be a conformist, right? There are things I want to conform to. So I'm okay with it. Like I want to conform to God's will because that's not natural, right? I have to conform to that. I have to give myself to that. So there are things that I want to conform to, and that's okay. But I don't want to conform to like the general population. Like the masses is not what I want to conform to. So yeah, I think that we should. I mean, I don't know. What do you think a good course of action to make people aware of this issue and to correct it? Like, is there anything you think we could do? Because I'm genuinely at like a loss. I'm not exactly sure what I would do.
I mean, okay, for example, Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
He's obviously like a philosopher. He's like a modern day philosopher essentially, but psychologist, right?
I think he's a psychiatrist. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he's one of those people that kind of bring attention to what morality used to be and what it needs to be now, and like how we're at a loss of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think people like him, like people need to reach out and they need to speak up, and when certain people that have good intentions and want to destroy this societal conformity that the West has kind of fallen under, speak up, and when they decide to when they have a platform that they can use, I think that the people that do have a heart to listen, because that's the first thing, people have a heart to listen, and you said it yourself, people don't want to be conformists. A lot of them don't.
Right.
So those that have a heart to listen can be changed. But that's the first step, right? A lot of people are just, they're stubborn in their own ways, and in that sense, they don't conform at all. Like they don't want to change. They like the way they are. Their life is easy. Their life is comfortable.
Which is also negative. Like it's okay. Like we're talking about conformity in a negative sense here, which I think generally speaking it is. But you also don't want to be the opposite. You don't want to just stand you don't want to be an anarchist.
Right.
There's no reason to stand in opposition of every single thing. There are times where you want to give in to like, I agree with this thing, whatever that thing may be. Yeah, I think another thing that's a really good point is obviously using platforms and speaking up. I think also talking on a low, like even if you don't have a platform, like you have friends and family, and accountability is a big thing we've talked about, and it's not even, it is accountability, but you don't even necessarily need to look at it that way. Just ask, like, why are you doing the thing you're doing?
Yeah.
Right? Like, ask your friends why. Because, A, it's good for you to know. If you're going to tag along, you should know why you're doing something. And B, it's going to make them think.
Part of the problem, though, is that even amongst Christians, which is kind of what mind boggles me, when you ask them, why are you doing this? and their answer is because I feel like it, because I want to, because it's fun,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. An answer that like no moral person would find acceptable.
Yeah.
And they answer that, like, where do you go with that? Like,
Those are
because
the
a lot of people, they don't actually have an intention of getting better. They don't
Mhm.
actually have an intention to live their lives for the Lord. So, or live their lives even with any moral standard.
Yeah. So, this is what I would say to an answer like that is you can push deeper than that. So if I were to say like, why do you sleep around? And you were to say, you don't. But in this hypothetical, you were to say, because it's fun, because I feel like it. And I were to say, well, why do you think you should satisfy your urges of fun? Like, why do you think that you should serve that? Immediately, they're either going to come with some sort of answer they're going to fumble over an answer,
Yeah.
or B, they're not going to answer that. They're going to be like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I just like
Or they'll
having
get
fun.
aggressive. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like, that's when it gets personal.
Well, it is, and you have to have a relationship there. You can't just say this to anybody. But I'm talking.
Another problem. Like,
yeah. But I'm talking if you have a relationship where you can prompt the question like this.
But like, who typically people that would even care to ask that question aren't surrounding themselves with people that.
Well, I thought I would agree with that, but as I've kind of experienced, there are some people out there who really are. They're intelligent, they care about these things, but they don't, like, they let them stop because they don't want the confrontation or they don't want the other things that come with something like this.
Conformists.
Yeah, pretty much. At least to some extent.
Like not even to themselves, but to the people around them. Like, they don't want to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Almost selfish.
It is. And that's the thing, that people who are non-confrontational, generally speaking, like, there is some goodwill in that, but it's not a good thing.
Fear. Like, a lot of it is fear.
It's a little selfish, because if you notice something wrong with somebody else, I think you have a civil duty, like as an American, a civil duty to point that out.
I mean,
not to a random stranger on the street, but like me, an association with you that I call a friend, as a law-abiding American, I should be like, hey, this thing that you're doing isn't right.
But even more so as a Christian.
Yeah, and if you're a Christian, it goes further than that.
Yeah, my perspective is like, obviously, you could make the argument that like sleeping around is bad for America, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You definitely could make that argument.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, like that's not going to be a conversation that goes over well. Like, you're not going to one person stopping sleeping around, isn't actually going to make a difference, right?
Well, but I agree with you, but it's that mentality that stops anybody from doing anything.
That's true, but anybody that doesn't want to stop isn't going to stop because of that.
Which is true, but I think a lot of time, maybe we undervalue the self-reflection that people do. Like, you have to be pretty disconnected to not have like some level of self-reflection. So if I'm going to have a conversation with somebody and I'm going to prompt them with, why do you sleep around? Because I like it. Why do you like that? Like, why is that what you're choosing to serve when you could do other things? Just saying that is going to put them in a state of thought where they have to ponder it. Like, I think most people in the world would have to like take that to heart and somehow come to terms with a question like that. And I think there's value in that, even if it doesn't stop them. You've planted a seed of like, maybe this isn't the best thing, and they'll start to consider some things. And if they don't, then you did what you could. You know what I mean? Because there's reason. Like, you can't, as a friend, I can't force you to stop doing something. I can just try to conversate with you and convince you that the thing that you're doing isn't right.
Yeah,
that's the most you can do. In the end, it's your choice whether you sleep around or whatever you do. But
yeah, and that's true.
And that, like, I just mean, like, if we're trying to find ways to at least halt it, or even maybe move it backwards, that's like the only way that I would think of is by talking about it and like holding people accountable, being like, why are you doing this thing?
Right.
Because I mean, maybe you're in a group where you do it and you don't know why you're doing it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Any challenge, like when people are challenged, it brings growth.
Yeah.
But people aren't challenged. People like comfort.
Mm-hmm. For sure. You have that verse. Did you find it?
Yeah, so
okay.
I'll read it, and it's not as straightforward as I'd like it to be, but I'll read it, and
I'll
kind of just tell you my point. But
yeah.
And therefore, thus saith the Lord, if thou return, then will I bring thee again. And thou shalt stand before me, and if thou take forth the precious from the vial, thou shalt be as my mouth. Let them return unto thee, but return not unto them.
Okay.
So basically, my point in saying this is, one, the Lord can return us. Like
Yeah.
the Lord can return us to. I mean, he can. I mean, he can. He's returned societies
Yeah,
to,
Israelites
yeah,
many
many
times.
times, over and over again.
Yeah.
And then one thing that I thought was interesting, said, "Let them return unto thee, but return not unto them." And
Mm.
that I find interesting, because even if we surround ourselves, even if the people around us aren't necessarily like forthcoming people, or
Yeah.
have a high standard for themselves,
Mhm.
right? Let them return to you, but don't return to them.
Hmm.
Challenge them, but don't but don't conform to them.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because you talk, and this is a balance that I think we both have struggled with, which is, I don't remember the exact verse, whether it's maybe, I think it's 1 Corinthians 12, something like that.
Yeah.
I don't know the verse off the top of my head, but it's essentially saying, hold the body of Christ accountable, right? And this is what's so difficult, is discerning when you are a light in a situation and when you are being, like, when are you helping people and when are you throwing your pearls among pigs? When are you eating with the evil and wicked? When does it become, when have you crossed that line? And that's such a, at least, I don't want to say for every Christian, but for me, and I think for you, such a delicate balance that I'm still learning, and I don't know if I'll ever come to like a conclusion, because as I go forward, there are times in the past where I thought I was being a light, and in hindsight, I definitely was throwing pearls among pigs. So it was definitely like, it wasn't receptive in any way, and I'm glad that I left relationships. But then there are also times where I've left relationships and I've been like, I probably should have stayed a little bit longer. Like, I probably could have been more helpful because I thought I was throwing pearls among pigs. And I think it's kind of in relation to the verse that you brought up. It's, you have to figure out when you're, as a Christian, we are often surrounded by people that are not like-minded, I think.
Mhm.
People that follow a different standard. So learning how you're going to conduct yourself in that standard that other people are in, and holding yourself to your own version of a standard, which is ideally like the Bible abiding standard, or whatever the standard you have is in your religion. How are you going to hold yourself accountable to that and not succumb, not conform to the group around you, but not condemn the group around you for not conforming to what you have as well? Because condemnation is not going to help either. It might be the right thing to do. Like, I would say you're in a moral high ground for sure, but that doesn't mean that the right thing to do is to condemn them all for the actions that they do. Like, no one's going to be receptive to that. So how do you guide them towards what you're doing without like imposing it? And I think that's like such a difficult balance. Something that I certainly am struggling with now, and I think almost always struggle with, because it's so nuanced.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, what has your experience been with situations like? 'Cause, I mean, we both have friends that are definitely not abiding by what we abide by. Like, how do you navigate that? What's your?
Yeah. Well, something that came to my attention is that certain friends, you can throw your pearls among pigs, right? Certain
Yeah.
friends aren't gonna be receptive. They. I mean, you can try to strengthen them. You can try to encourage them.
Mm-hmm.
You can try to hold them accountable, but
Sure.
they just won't be receptive.
Mm-hmm.
And and something that's come to my mind is sometimes the only way to make them receptive is by distance, and not full barring off, but by
Right.
distance. So you mentioned that sometimes you thought you were throwing pearls among pigs, but when you left, you realized that maybe there was more to give.
Mm-hmm.
But that space might have been necessary.
Right. That's fair. Yeah.
But I mean, obviously, once again, it's a delicate balance between, backing away and completely cutting off,
Mm-hmm.
or, putting too much forward, even if they're not receiving it. But yeah, I guess it is really case by case.
Yeah.
I mean, for sure, it's case by case. Like I said earlier, people's hearts have to be receptive. Like, you can't, people don't want to live in conformity, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not everybody is going to take criticism from others, or not everybody is going to even take encouragement from others, or
accountability, or any, yeah,
accountability, whatever. Yeah.
Right. And that's like, psychologically, you have to understand people to be able to like pursue. I think, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but I think that's why we notice so many people nowadays like running through friends. Like, how many people do you see have a really solid friendship at an early age that continues into their life? They were friends and now their kids are friends. Like, how often do you see that? Not very often. No. And it's because the amount of effort that a friendship takes is being undervalued right now. It's being underestimated, I should say. Yeah. I don't think people really understand how difficult a proper friendship is, especially a God-grounded spiritual friendship.
Right. Well, yeah, furthermore, God-grounded spiritual makes it so much harder.
Way harder.
And then you take it to the place of, like, people just don't understand that any friendship worthwhile is going to be difficult.
Right.
Because relationship is difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Love is difficult.
Yeah.
And people don't want to love because love is hard.
Right. But and I think understand, like, you have to do, this has been my experience, and it maybe this isn't the case for everybody, but you almost have to do a level of like psychoanalysis on your friends to understand, like, how are you going to present information? What are their behaviors to understanding if they're being receptive to the information? And I think a lot of this happens like subconsciously. Like, humans are pretty good at it. And that's kind of what you call like social awareness.
Yeah, right.
Is their ability to read all of these things.
True. I mean, but you have to have that. Like, you have to be aware of the way to approach them. Yeah, absolutely.
And the further you dive, the more you have to give it conscious effort. Because, I mean, I've noticed this with you and other great friends that I have, where I have something to present to them that I think is super great. And I'm like, this is gonna be great. They're gonna take this the perfect way. Like, I have an idea of how they're gonna do it, and then I present the information, and it's not taken like the absolute worst way, because I wasn't thinking about how are they gonna take it. I was thinking, or like, what's the best way for them to take it. I was like, I'm just gonna present the information, and because it's good information, they're gonna take it the right way.
Right. Yeah. You're thinking about the conclusion, not the process, not how you're gonna do it. You're thinking about
the beginning and the end. Yeah.
Right.
But not the journey into how to make you receptive, or anybody for that matter. And I think that's another really important thing.
That's another thing. Like, for ourselves, we need to talk about introspection, self-reflection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We need to make sure that we can be receptive, that our hearts are open to criticism or encouragement or accountability.
Yeah.
Because if we're not, then the whole job isn't on you.
Mm-hmm.
Throwing pearls among pigs. The only reason that verse is in the Bible is because
humans are pigs sometimes.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, pearls. Those are pearls. That information could be phenomenal,
mm-hmm.
but then it's just not received.
Right.
And most of the time it's because of pride.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, that's pretty much it. That's what that verse is referring to, in my opinion, is pride. Like, they're pigs because they won't receive the information. And yeah, you've got to learn how to, I mean, and that's like kind of the reality of all of it, is it's a lot of this is pride based, right? You conform because you want to be someone in this group, right? You want to feel like something, which is prideful.
Right.
Like, it's centered in you. Like, why would I want to be a part of a group? To feel accepted. Like, you want to feel accepted, or you want to be a part of a group, whatever that thing is.
Because the security isn't in God, it's in man.
Right. Yeah. And it all comes from pride. Like, it definitely does. So the more that you can learn to, like, Christian or not, journaling is fantastic. Like, it's a very like new age thing to journal. I mean, it's not like it's been done in the past, but I think it's like very trendy right now, where you're like,
is it trendy?
Like the self-help books that are like, you should journal and meditate and that sort of new age stuff. So I am going to recommend it, but I'm going to recommend it in a different way. Don't journal like, dear diary, you're like, goals that I want to accomplish in this year. Like, no, the things that you think, the raw emotion that you're not willing to say to people, you write in that journal, because it needs to come out. You can't keep it in. Yeah. It's very bad. Like, there's a common saying, sin grows in the dark.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right.
But all things bad grow in the dark, right? Like, anything that isn't good will grow in the dark. So if you need to put stuff out there, put it on paper. Even if you're not confident to speak, you can't tell friends about stuff, grab a journal, grab a piece of paper, it doesn't have to be a journal, and write some stuff down. It'll help you gain some self-awareness, and it'll help you realize some area. Like, sometimes for me, I've been making decisions about college, and I've been looking about like things about this podcast and how I'm going to pursue the future with all of this. I'm trying to think about the best ways to go about doing that stuff. And the conclusion that I've come to came to me by journaling, by me writing it all out, looking at it, walking away for a little bit, coming back and rereading it. And with that fresh mind, it's like a new set of eyes, right? You come back, you relook at something and you're like, oh, this is totally what I should be doing. Like, this is the way that I should be pursuing the thing, or this is how I should handle the situation in the future, whatever it is.
Yeah, like, that helps with like clarity of mind.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, yeah, when I make a decision, I take time off, I sleep on it, or
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Mhm.
Writing it down. That's another thing. Like when you take notes in college or in high school, and you really want to learn something, you want it to stick in your brain.
You got to write it down.
Write
Yeah,
it down helps,
for sure.
and that's part of it. I think it brings a sort of mental clarity.
Mhm.
You can organize your thoughts a little bit better when you write them down.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt. And I think, like you were saying about self-reflection, that is like an easy pathway to people who maybe aren't like innately introspective to get that.
Yeah.
Because you don't like, you're not born with, some people are better at it, but you're not like born being introspective. Like some people just learn to understand themselves and feel the need to evaluate self. And a really easy way of doing that is by journaling, because it's like having a friend there who's really blunt.
I mean, yeah, you force yourself to sit down and to write every detail.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people don't want to come to terms with themselves and
Right.
who they are.
Yeah.
But when you're forced to do that, I mean, it's a healthy exercise. And you think about that, it kind of reminds me of prayer. It's like
it's very similar.
prayer doesn't come easily for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's harder for some people. Like I know a lot of like if you go to like a youth group and you have people praying. Okay, camera died.
Yeah.
All right, we're back up. But anyways, if you go to a youth group, right, and you have people praying, there's always that girl that's really good with words. And her prayer can be like, a whole 30 minutes long, constantly talking. Like prayer just comes easily. She's willing to, I mean, her life is a soap opera already.
Yeah.
She's willing to pour it all out on the floor with everyone there, but she can pray, right?
Yeah.
It's not as easy for everybody. It's more difficult. Like you always have that one guy in the group that either never opens his mouth, or if he opens his mouth, he has 2 sentences and he's calling it a day because he's at a loss for words.
Mm-hmm.
So prayer is hard to come by. And same thing with journaling. Like not everybody can have that introspection, but drills such as actually praying every day, right? And drills such as writing things down in a journal can help you with introspection and self-reflection. And
I think, something specifically to go off of that like analogy that you're talking about with that girl, a lot of times when someone there's these beautiful like sentences with the most eloquent vocabulary, it's just like, it seems like the words are coming from God. Those people probably aren't thinking about God. It's possible. I'm not saying that definitively, but I'm saying like, I've seen a lot of people who are like great at prayer in quotations and they're really just trying to impress the group around them.
I mean, there's a big difference between great at prayer and good at public speaking.
Right. And I think
granted, that's not everybody.
It's not everybody.
You have like a Jordan Peterson that the way he talks is actually just beyond, our comprehension.
Yeah.
And some people are just genuinely better at speaking. Right.
And that's totally fine. But I want to point out, like, just because if you're the quiet person, this is probably for you, but just because somebody else is praying in a verbose way doesn't mean that your prayers are lesser than, or that you're like, or in journaling is the same way. Just because somebody can write 16 pages of basically a book doesn't mean that the way that you journal is wrong or that it's lesser than. It's not. Yeah. It's just a different way of going about things.
It's not for other people. It's not for other people to hear.
Exactly.
It's for your.
It's for you,
the Lord. So it's and you're and exactly. So that's one thing that's like, I'm not gonna say dangerous, but difficult, for lack of a better word, when it comes to group prayer, is the fact that people have this automatic temptation to pray for the group. And I don't mean pray for them. I mean
like pray to impress.
To show them,
yeah.
And so when you pray in a group, do your best to make it for God. Because then if your security is in the Lord, or even for yourself, prayer for yourself, talking to God. If your security is in the Lord, then you don't need to care what other people think, and your prayer can just be at face value. Yeah. You are talking to God, and that's the only thing that matters. And that's part of the reason why, like, stereotypically you bow your head and close your eyes when you pray. Palm your hands, bow your head, close your eyes, because it's about removing what's around you and focusing on the thing that's at hand. Not getting caught up in other people's movements.
Right, exactly. And there's value in that, I think. And honestly, it's a similar thing with journaling, to continue to relate them. I think setting a place for you to journal, setting aside a time, a place, a private place for sure. Like, right before I go to bed at my desk, I'm going to journal or whatever. It can be anywhere, but setting aside that time, that private place, it gives you a connection to the fact that the camera just turned off, It's hot. Camera's really hot. And so we're experiencing some technical difficulties. Anyway, yeah. I kind of forget what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Low key. Yeah. I mean, girl praying, journaling, stuff like that.
Okay. No, I think the main point is that self-reflection
It's very valuable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very valuable, and it comes with practice.
Yeah.
Prayer, the most valuable thing, and it comes with practice.
Yep.
Yeah, it all goes back to consistency.
Yeah. And to kind of wrap things up here with a nice little ribbon, bring it back to conformity. The reason that we go off on that rabbit trail is these are all ways that you can like keep yourself away from conformity. Because I think, like we said, generally speaking, conformity is not a good thing. Mm-hmm. And even if you choose to conform to something, that doesn't inherently need to be bad. Like if you let's say you're choosing to conform to secular culture, as long as you're aware and critically thought through that process. And I think what's actually happening is people aren't critically thinking through why they're conforming. They're just doing the thing.
Yeah.
It's
easy.
peer
You're
pressure.
just going around with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or not even peer pressure, just going along with it. Like
right.
whatever's easier. Yeah. Hop on the train.
Right. And I think that I don't care what you do. You can go ahead and conform all you want to culture, and that's cool. But as long as you understand A, what you're doing, and B, the repercussions of your actions, those are the only two things I care about as a bystander. Because I think,
because ultimately you'll come to, to truth. Like ultimately you'll.
Ideally, yeah.
If you critically think, obviously this is just my opinion or one man's perspective, but if you critically think, then you'll start to see the inherent problems with today's secular culture and where the West has led our culture.
Certainly. Even if it doesn't bring you to, Jesus Christ, you'll at least understand that sleeping around isn't a good idea.
Yeah.
Or that, dressing in scanty clothing, crop top this and all that, probably not a good idea either. Like, you're just inviting bad things to happen. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, just maybe don't do that. Maybe dress a little bit modest. That's all I'm saying.
For yourself.
Right, for you, not for other people, but yeah, for you.
Well, that's the issue. But yeah. Essentially, all this to say that there needs to be a certain amount of critical thought, and you need to have self-reflection on why you're doing the things you're doing. You need to understand, why am I conforming? Why am I conforming to this? Mm-hmm. Why have I hopped on the train with this?
Yep. Yeah.
Just think about your actions. It's good. It just goes to the most simple thing that our parents told us when we were kids. Think about your actions. Yeah,
right. Think about the things you're doing. And honestly, the sort of thing that the trope that, if your friends jumped off a bridge, would you jump too? Right? Everyone's heard that. But I think more importantly, maybe tell your friend not to jump off the bridge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and try to help.
Yeah, exactly. We talked about a way to stop this conformity or actually turn the culture into a way that's half decent. And to be honest, there's no great answer, but the best thing you can do is help your brother.
Yeah, hold people accountable. I think that's one of the biggest things we can do as a people, It's because even if, if somebody chooses to do their own thing, I'm not here to condemn that. Do your own thing. You luckily have a God-given right to go do whatever you want. Praise the Lord, right? You live in at least in America, we live in a free country. You can kind of do whatever. So we got some laws, but you can do a lot. And I'm not here to condemn what you're doing. If you want to do it, go do it. I just want to make sure that you know what you're doing, the repercussions of what you're doing, and that you're okay with it, that you're fully aware of that what you're doing is what you want to be doing. And the only way to do that is with accountability, because we, like you said before, we have a very blurred self-perception. It's really hard for us to really understand all of our own faults.
Yeah.
Even if you're a very, very reflective person, I know a lot of people are really introspective that don't know some of their biggest flaws. You're blind to them. It's just it's part of human nature, and that's okay. But that's why you need to surround yourself with good friends that will hold you accountable, that will keep you to a standard that you want to be held to in reality.
Mm-hmm.
But
and you have to
and you have to let them.
You have to let them.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. You got to be receptive.
And for the people that are trying to be that friend, try to bring it to them in a way that they can receive it.
Yeah, and keep going. especially if it's someone that I hate to say, like, if it's not someone you care about, it's not that big of a deal. But especially with like really, really close friends or family, like, be persistent.
Yeah. But I mean, because it's a matter of life and death, right?
For Christians, it definitely is. Yeah.
I mean, for any, right.
Yeah.
I mean, any sort of non-compliance with conformity is bringing you closer to what is right and what is true.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a matter of life and death, period.
Yeah. I suppose that's true. I mean, just ensuring that people are given the opportunity to choose what they want to choose and to not be forced into a hand that they didn't want. You know, that's what this is. It's not even necessarily like when I go to, because I don't really evangelize, but I love talking to people about the truth. And I don't necessarily push them towards God. Like, I'm more than happy to quote scripture, things like that. But the biggest thing is I just want them to understand what they want. And if they're willing to say, like, all I want is to be happy and to pursue my own self-interest, and that is what I serve my own self-interest. If they're willing to say that and that's what they genuinely want, then fine, go do it.
Because furthermore, I mean, you'd probably be throwing your pearls among pigs.
In that situation, I would probably say so. And if that's what you want to do, fine, go do it. That's cool. But all I want to do is, like, maybe try to help people be aware of what they're at, like what they're aiming for. And if they're aiming for something like that, then, like, who am I to stop you? I'm not. Go. But I think a lot of times when you ask people these kinds of questions and when you encourage them to be introspective, they end up being like, yeah, you're right. I really don't want to serve my self-interest forever. Like, I do want a family. I do want to serve the interest of that. I want to serve the interest of, something else, whatever it is.
I mean, if they want to have a successful relationship,
mm-hmm.
any relationship, any human relationship,
right,
then they're going to have to understand that it takes a lot of selflessness.
Right. And even just like, because I'm not going to tell you how to be less of you or how to, like, this is how you stop having sex with people. Like, no. But when you pose those kinds of questions, even if you're young, I want to specifically say it's like, you don't have to be old to do this. Even if you're young and you're among peers, when you pose these kinds of questions, who are you serving? Why are you serving it? Is it actually what you want to be serving? Just those 3 questions are enough for a lot of people to stop in their tracks. And just to think, even if it doesn't stop them from doing a stupid decision, because it may not, and actually I think often chances it won't, but even just that thought being placed in their head is a good thing. It's a positive thing. And so I would encourage people to continue having conversations like that, or to start having conversations like that if they're not. And to take away, like, the day that you listen to this podcast, just think about conformity as you walk through your day, right? Just think about the word. If you and then stop yourself if you notice yourself conforming to something you don't want to, whatever that is, whatever that may be,
or that's not right.
Yeah, right. And just keep that with you as you walk. I think it might be really valuable. And then, like, comment how hard that was. Maybe it was easy to you, like, yeah, I don't conform very much. Maybe it was difficult. Like, just, you don't have to get personal. I'm not going to ask you to be like, yeah, I struggled in this area. But just talk about that. And yeah, think about it and then just tell us, like, was it easy or was it not easy? Because it would be fun for us to figure that out too. So our camera died again. I'm giving up on it. Sorry, YouTube people. Deal with it. But appreciate all of those who are listening. By the way, YouTube people that can't see us right now, if you didn't know, we're everywhere. We're on Apple Music, Spotify. Obviously, we're on YouTube. Basically all the podcast platforms. So check us out there if you're, like, on a drive or whatever. You don't want to pull up YouTube. I understand that. Check us out on those places. Also, we have the clothing coming soon. And I mean, like, actually soon. I don't mean like soon in like 6 months. I mean, like, it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
We're working on it.
I'm wearing part of it right now.
He is. You wouldn't see, and he also wore something over it. But but keep an eye out for that. It's coming. We're excited for it. Yeah, Instagram. That's the easiest way. We'll leave a link to our Instagram in the description. But @Risen Clothing is the Instagram.
Yes.
Check it out. It's worth.
We'll get some stuff up there.
Yeah.
Soon.
It's exciting. We're excited.
Yes.
And obviously, stay up with the podcast. We have a lot of cool episodes coming at you. A lot of interesting topics that we're ready to cover, and maybe some new guests that we're going to bring on, stuff like that. So just stay tuned, and we appreciate it as always. Have a good day.
All right.
You conformists.
Yeah. Right. All right. See you next time.